Guitar is important. It's left its mark on pop culture and the history of music on a truly global scale. It's versatile, it's loud, it's cheap, it's portable, which all conspire to make it the world's most popular instrument. From the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains to the Ethiopian highlands, you're gonna hear guitar. Part of the reason for this, of course, is American cultural hegemony in the 20th century, but the guitar was not born in the Americas. And its current ubiquity was never inevitable. And it would take conflict, engineering, a heaping dose of salesmanship to bring guitar to its level of global domination, so to speak. And its popularity would eventually reach this kind of critical point, leaving its cultural fingerprint on everything it came into contact with. So you might have one of these in your living room like I do, and it's amazing how much thought and generational knowledge has gone into that instrument. And it has steel strings, which is actually a pretty recent development when it comes to guitar. This, on the other hand, is a Spanish or classical guitar. It has nylon strings. Back in the day, this would have been strung with gut. This is kind of your standard solid body electric guitar. And this, of course, is a solid body electric bass. But all of these can trace their lineage back to Spain and the baroque guitar, or more pedantically, the baroque guitar. By the way, you can totally watch this video on its own, but I do have a part 1 that covers the entire history of stringed instruments, all the way up to our baroque Iberian guitar. So I'll put a link down in the description if you want to check that out. But today is all about how the guitar climbed the hierarchy of contemporary instruments. How it went from like a niche parlor novelty for the well-off to the world's most dominant piece of vibrating wood. But I'm David Hughes, this is Charcuterie Sound. Grab a snack, grab a drink, and let's dive in. So I'm just gonna give you a really quick recap of kind of how we got to the baroque guitar. So we have an instrument called the oud being brought to Spain via the expansion of the Umayyad Caliphate. And the oud would continue to develop in the Umayyads' successor state, Al-Andalus in Spain, and even after the Christian Reconquista. Spanish lute makers, or luthiers as we call them now, explored a lot of different morphologies that were related to the lute and the oud. And some of them are very guitar-like the guitarra latina or the vihuela. The popularity of these instruments was far more niche when compared to the dominance of the medieval lute, which is very much like an oud with frets, you know? But it would eventually be this funny little baroque guitar that would earn some respect. First as a parlor instrument, then as a court instrument. And this thing's really cool. I mean, to me, it kind of looks like a giant ukulele. But in a lot of ways, this is still a very different instrument than the guitars I showed you just a moment ago. Firstly, the baroque guitar had 10 strings. Well, functionally it had 5 strings, but literally it had 10 strings. It's like this 12-string guitar, where the strings are organized into courses. And courses are just sets of double strings that play the same note. So you could play this guitar just like you'd play a 6-string guitar, just instead of pressing down 1 string, you press down 2. All the chords will be the same, it just has a different sound to it, more jangly kind of sound. I don't know if this is in tune. It's not. Probably should tune this before the video, but you get the idea. Also, the frets on those guitars are fixed and they're made of steel, whereas the baroque guitar has movable frets that are made out of gut or animal intestine. And this is because of the tuning systems that guitar players were using at the time required them to be able to move frets when needed. We currently use a tuning system that is called equal temperament. It's kind of a sonic compromise. It splits the octave into 12 semitones. If you don't know what that means, that's totally okay. The important thing to remember is that the equal temperament tuning system allows a guitar player to move between keys without having to reconfigure their instrument. So this means we can have frets that are fixed in place. You know what? No, we're gonna do a quick sidebar on tuning. Like when you think about it, it's crazy. Sound is just vibrating air that is picked up by our ears. And it's not like we hear all possible sounds. We only hear a very specific spectrum, a spectrum of vibration speeds. So to come up with a tuning system to tune an instrument, you have to take this spectrum of sounds that we can hear and you have to split it up into useful chunks. And then you have to solve the engineering problem of being able to play those sounds in a clear and repeatable way, so that you know every time you play that note, it's going to be the same. This allows you to build harmonies, chords. I just find it neat. So although hundreds of generations were involved in the creation of this amazing instrument, the current acoustic form is the creative achievement of just one guy. At least the standardized form that we're used to. Kind of like a genius standing on the shoulders of giants kind of metaphor. I spoke briefly in the first video about how the luthiers of Spain were something special. And honestly, that's still the case to today. But the genius luthier that I'm talking about, really he was just a carpenter by trade, is Antonio de Torres Uraro, the man who built the guitar that most guitars today are derivatives of. His approach was simply to fix several problems that guitars had at the time. The first issue that he tackled was the problem of string tension. If you saw my previous video, you know that string tension has been an engineering problem since literally the dawn of human civilization. The royal lyres of Ur, for example, in Mesopotamia, they solved this problem by having a large crossbar. With a Spanish acoustic, it's got a flat back, it wants to fold in two. But Tony Uraro solved this problem with a unique form of internal bracing called fan bracing. It keeps the instrument light, but it dramatically increases its strength, improving the longevity and the durability of the instrument. There's still some of these instruments around today. The next issue is volume. The guitar at this time was almost comically quiet, but our man Uraro created a large standardized resonating chamber. And this would increase the guitar's volume and increase its usefulness as a performance instrument. Although it's important to keep in mind that his guitars were still really quiet when compared to today's contemporary models. And the final and maybe the most important advancement that Uraro made was symmetricality. Uraro's dual cutaway design, it wasn't new, you see it in the baroque guitar, but he kind of perfected it, making it a lot more ergonomic to play. And again, because of his new form of bracing, there didn't need to be an asymmetrical support system inside the instrument that favored the volume of the lower strings. So you get a more consistent volume across all strings. Like, here's my guy, and here's one of Uraro's original instruments. Not too much has changed. His tinkering was so effective that it's kind of frozen the Spanish guitar design in place. Although his original guitars are more of a Sotheby's thing, and my nylon string guitar would be more of an eBay thing. What I'm saying is his originals are priceless, pretty much. So the guitar was in the Americas before English settlers landed at Plymouth Rock. And this is important to focus on because a lot of explanations of the history of the guitar are very Anglo-centric. The guitar, as you remember, was born in Iberia, and it spread through the Latino sphere a lot faster, and other Romance countries, a lot faster than it did through England and English America. The guitar and its half-brother, the vihuela, were incredibly popular in Spanish colonies. Although by 1611, the guitar and local variations of the guitar were clearly winning the format battle between the vihuela and the guitarra. The French also enjoyed the guitar, and they spread its use from the St. Lawrence, near where I live, to the Mississippi. We have records of the Ursuline Order of Nuns teaching guitar to children in Quebec as early as the 1640s. So that trope of like the singing nun with the guitar, that goes way back. And of course, the English colonists, once arrived, also enjoyed the guitar, English guitar, which is, it's a guitar, but it's very different from the Spanish guitar. And as a form factor, it would eventually kind of die out as well. It wouldn't really be until the late 18th century and the early 19th century that more recognizable forms of guitar become popular in English-speaking America. And this is largely the result of new waves of immigration from Europe, from Germany, Italy, France, and Spain. So for a while there in the English-speaking colonies in the Americas, the English guitar was kind of on top. Ben Franklin, in between loving French women and getting struck by lightning, was known to play this guitar very well. But by the 1830s, the Spanish guitar had clearly won. The English guitar became very obscure, it became a niche instrument. Now, it's at this point that I have to mention a darker chapter in the history of the guitar, and that is its central role in minstrel performances. So the minstrel show was a form of traveling entertainment that was popular in 19th century America. Generally, these shows involved white men in blackface, playing crude stereotypes of African Americans, intended for comedic effect. There was almost always a musical component to these shows, and the guitar was often front and center. And as the popularity of these minstrel shows exploded, so did the popularity of the guitar. And really, this popularity created a pull effect with more musicians learning the instrument and more manufacturers making it. Now, minstrel shows aren't the only reason why guitar took hold in America, but they are a very important part of that story. And they went on way too long, like way too long. So the problem of volume has plagued the entire history of stringed instruments, especially those of which that are plucked. If you use a pick instead of your fingers, you can get a louder sound. That's what they do with the oud. If you have a larger resonating chamber, you can also get a louder sound. If you add frets to your instrument, you can increase your volume too. All these methods work, but at the turn of the century, the guitar was still a comparatively quiet instrument. And this is just in time for the jazz age, where things are very loud. Pianos and horns are dominant. And despite all those previously mentioned technical advancements, the guitar was being drowned out. So jazz players loved the versatility of the guitar for soloing and for emerging genres of Latin jazz. And at the same time, the American audience was going through a craze for Hawaiian music, which incorporated the steel guitar. Guitar wasn't gone, but big band jazz was also really popular. It was only a matter of time before the two converged, but it couldn't happen until this problem of volume was solved. And of course, as music nerds are wont to do, many tinkered with their own homebrew solutions, placing little button microphones inside their guitars, using pieces of old telephones. First people to get there on any sort of scale were Georges Bouchon and Adolphe Rickenbacker. They sold the first commercially successful electric guitar, lovingly called the frying pan. This is pretty far from the electric guitar that I have, and it was meant to be played on your lap, kind of purpose-built for Hawaiian music. So Rickenbacker was the brain behind the pickup. It's important to point out that these early pickups were very primitive by today's standards. It was only 1932, but this novel electric instrument didn't take very long to explode in popularity. There were electric guitar manufacturers popping up everywhere. Vox, Epiphone, Gibson. These were all founded within 4 years of the frying pan. A company called Vivitone would be the first firm to create a production run of an electric version of the Spanish guitar. But it would be Gibson with the Gibson ES-150 that really achieved commercial success. You probably noticed something, that these are hollow. They're like acoustic guitars that moonlight as electric guitars. They're not what you think of when you think of an electric guitar. So it's time to introduce what you've all been waiting for, the totally rock and roll badass instrument that we all know and love, the solid body electric guitar. So, well, not quite yet. Tinkerers and independent luthiers were making solid body electric guitars, but the big companies hadn't really cracked it. That is, a solid body electric guitar that would both sound good and could be sold at a price that your average musician could afford. Enter another giant of the guitar industry, Fender, or Leo Fender, this guy. He invented the first mass-produced solid body guitar, the Fender Telecaster, a guitar with a bright sound that could cut through the noise, has a durable ergonomic body that is still a hit with musicians today, across like a seriously wide spectrum of genres too. I've wanted one of these guys for so long. One day. So rock and roll wouldn't come around for a few more years, but the Fender Telecaster really influenced the bright biting sound of early rock and roll. Gibson would quickly respond with their own solid body electric guitar, the famous Gibson Les Paul. The electric guitar had arrived in American popular culture, and it would go on to influence so many genres of music and so many specific moments in music history. I mean, it's hard to think of an instrument that's had as much of an impact on American popular culture as the solid body electric guitar. So that's how the guitar ended up with what we have today. If you want to see the effect that the guitar had on many different genres of music, check out some of my genre introductions. I really do go into some of the technical stuff that has to do with guitar effects, guitar techniques. So if you like this video, maybe you like those ones. I'll add links to each in the description. I started off this two-part series talking about the mouth bow and how it might be humanity's first brush with a stringed instrument. That first pluck happened deep in prehistory. We've stolen that sound. We've amplified it, complicated it by adding multiple strings. We've added tension, precision tuning, and strength. We use electricity and magnetics to plug this sound into amplification and effects. And this is amazing, but it's done to capture and stylize that first pluck. To me, that's very cool. Anyway, I think this is where I'm going to leave it. Thanks for watching. Leave a like for the algorithm gods. And if you like videos on topics like this, please consider subscribing. It really helps me out, and I really appreciate it. If you'd like to suggest a topic for a future video, please let me know. I try and read and respond to every comment, and I just like to hear what you guys are interested in. But as always, stay curious, keep listening, and I'll see you next time.